What's up, everyone? We had another very big day in the market as Bitcoin cracked $30,000 each. And while all this is happening, we have some very scary things actually happening behind the scenes, some of which we haven't seen in over 30 years. And this is all happening as we have a huge day in the stock market tomorrow. Tomorrow will hands down be the most important day of the week. We have crucial inflation data set to release and FOMC and an FOMC minutes report, all while we have stocks at major levels. We have another awesome video today. We have so much to cover, and the market is about to get very, very exciting. So make sure to stick with us today. But Tom, let's get right into it.
Yeah, Mike, I will say the S&P 500 still did pretty well today overall. Now, that big move at close was definitely kind of disheartening there to the bulls today. But for all the bears, that does give us some hope with that CPI tomorrow, maybe pushing us back down to 407 or maybe even 405 or 400 if the data is bad enough. But I will say that big move up was pretty significant. We actually got above 410, ran all the way up to 411, met a ton of resistance. And then we closed somewhere down here right around 410 again. So for tomorrow, we're going to have that big inflation data coming out in the morning, Mike, 8:30 a.m. Eastern time. We've been talking about this all week long. There is actually some pretty good expectations with this. If we look at the CPI very, very closely here, the previous report came in at 6%. Looks like right now they're looking at 5.2 to 5.3% on that year-over-year inflation rate. Now we can actually go look at the chart and see that, there's been a very significant decline in inflation recently, but still we are way too high at 6%. And those, I will say those forecasts at 5.2 and 5.3 actually seem pretty promising. If we come in down there, that would be awesome. But if we come in higher, it could end up being a pretty bad day in the market. We could see some significant selling, especially considering how some of these stocks like Nvidia, Apple, Microsoft, AMD, and others are just so overextended on their daily charts. If some of these big supports start breaking, we're going to see some very bloody days in the market over the next couple days.
It can definitely get nasty. I'll say that right now. We have a bunch of stocks at very aggressive levels, and you said it yourself, Tom. Inflation data is so important, and everyone will be watching this event tomorrow. If it comes in too hot, expect some mean selling pressure to come in. But then again, it's like if we see inflation come in a lot lower than expectations, that can be a great sign for the bulls as well. So either way, expect a pretty big day tomorrow. It's going to get interesting. And then, Tom, we can't forget about that FOMC minutes report either. So it's like we have two big events on the schedule. So we have the CPI or inflation data 1 hour before market open at 8:30 a.m. Eastern time. And then we have the FOMC minutes report coming out at 2 p.m. Eastern time. So we're like double dipping on volatility tomorrow. So keep that in mind. The FOMC minutes report will basically tell us what the top dogs at the Federal Reserve were talking about and looking at during their last interest rate decision. And speaking of interest rates, for the next meeting, the market is actually pricing in a 25 basis point rate hike. And just a couple weeks ago, Tom, we were more towards like a 50-50% chance of a rate hike or just a pause.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of people are starting to talk about a potential pause. And I'm starting to feel like that, maybe if this CPI data tomorrow or the inflation rate comes actually in around expectations, maybe lower around 5.2 to 5.3%, that might actually swing the FedWatch Tools chart maybe more towards a pause because it would show that inflation's actually going the way that the Feds want. So maybe they don't have to be as restrictive anymore. And if that's the case, the market should love that. And I will say, looking at the SPY on the daily chart, recently, we've been starting to break above that big trend line here on the daily chart. Now, I know that trend lines obviously aren't always been invictive or, for sure moves whenever you have big events like this going on. But with us being above this, it's one of those things where it's like if we get a nice push up tomorrow, that might be the big confirmation that we're going to say, well, hey, maybe we're going to have a nice breakout this summer and, we might start to run back up. But at the same time, it could end up being negative and maybe send us back down for another test of that trend line. But I'm really watching this because I feel like that this recent breakout and test there was actually pretty important. And I feel like that, if we get that good confirmation, we could see bulls really drive this up. Obviously I'm scared and I'm actually kind of pushing to the downside with some of the way the stocks are overextended, but it's just with the way that they're running right now, it's like, look at this momentum on Nvidia. It just seems like it's never ending here.
It's so interesting. Just like you said, it's like you look at these stocks, whether it's Nvidia or Apple or basically any other stock over the past couple weeks and months, and it's just been like, it's been explosive to the upside. And all this is happening, just like we talked about yesterday with these like I guess you could say once in a decade hedge fund short positions. We're actually seeing a lot of bearish positioning from hedge funds right now. There's the S&P 500 futures being shorted at, a higher pace right now than they've been in over 10 years.
Yeah, that is huge. We have that. And then we also have the airlines actually having some shorts against them right now at the highest rate since the pandemic. And as we know, people always talk about travel and stuff like that with the economy. And, if these airlines are set to do pretty bad, I mean, you would think travel and stuff like that might slow down as people aren't obviously having as much money ready for vacations and travel and etc. So, yeah, it's crazy, Mike. I can't believe all the shorts that we're seeing come through. And, there's been all that big bullish flow that we've been talking about on gold and GDX and all those stocks that follow fear as well. And look at that. GDX had another huge green day today.
Yeah, it really tells you where the money's flowing right now. People are really buying up those safe haven assets, and I really don't blame them. Gold and silver and even certain treasuries have seen decent flows lately. So that's definitely worth keeping in mind. But before we move on, Tom, I got to talk a little bit more about this airline short position. So basically what we have going on is we can see the headline, traders are betting against airlines at the highest rate since the pandemic. That's a big headline. So basically what we have going on is around $2 billion worth of short positions are now active against the ETF JETS, JETS. Essentially what this is a bunch of airline stocks all in one, right? So if this goes down, you could expect companies like Southwest and Delta and United and a bunch of other stocks like that to decline. And it's like, people aren't, or hedge funds aren't just shorting this stock for, no reason. It's like, obviously there's, if we're seeing this level of shorts, there's a good argument for this trade. I saw some people were saying, just like you said, Tom, with the consumer being pretty weak, and then on top of that, just the other week we had oil prices rise because of that OPEC, what was it, the supply cut.
Yeah, OPEC plays a big role in airlines as well, more than people think sometimes. Obviously, the price of oil always translate into jet fuel and stuff like that. I know that always that always affects travel as well, but yeah, that is just crazy to see that much money going against jets here. And I will say over the past couple days, jets has actually been popping back up a little bit more. But, this is actually coming right as we have Delta reporting earnings on Thursday. So this will be in 2 days. I will be watching this very closely on Thursday morning before the market opens, especially with all this money going into jets. You would think maybe if Delta comes in bad and we start to see a big move down, that might not be a bad trade to start to follow jets to the downside.
Good point there. All right. And then, Tom, we can't forget about the big news related to the IMF today. There's actually some pretty scary data that we haven't seen since 1990. So fill us in.
Yeah. So, we have all this stuff going on with the obviously the CPI data, the inflation stuff going on, and then we have S&P 500 contract shorts at all-time highs or decade highs right now. Now we have the IMF cutting GDP forecast apparently, and they're looking for they're going to say that we're heading for the weakest growth since 1990 or over 30 years on their medium-term forecast. So that is actually pretty rough. Now they're looking to see global growth of 2.8% this year and 3% in 2024. So it's not good, but it's below their estimates that they put out in January. And if we go down here and we start looking at some of these other countries throughout here, they're saying China is expected to actually increase by 5.2% in 2023. But then you start looking at, the global growth rate. So China's actually beating the global growth rate by quite a bit. Now with the United States, they're looking at expanding by 1.6% this year. And the Eurozone's only expanding by 0.8%, with the UK actually contracting. But this just goes to show how, China's economy right now is actually doing pretty good. Now you can see Russia's economy is contracting a little bit too, probably with everything going on. But, China's really leading the game here.
Or at least it seems.
Yeah, exactly. You never know with them. Who knows? They could have fudged up numbers, and obviously China companies are very subject to manipulation. We'll just say that.
True that. Alrighty, so definitely interesting news there. And if we jump back to the charts just for a second, it was a kind of mixed day. We saw some good upwards movement, we saw some good downwards movement, but one security that actually has been booming over the past week is good old Bitcoin. We're back above that $30,000 mark, and it was running with some real power today, so that's awesome to see. But Tom, I'm actually kind of disappointed in us, because we should have known this. Just a month ago, Jimmy Boy let us know that he was expecting he wasn't too big of a fan with Bitcoin, and what do you know? It pops up by nearly 50%.
Yeah, he said he'd sell his Bitcoin right into this rally. So, hey, that was all we needed, right? Look at that big move up in Bitcoin lately. I cannot believe that we just broke 30,000 today. Like you said, Jimmy Boy does it again, guys. Let me know in the comments how you feel about Cramer. Some people love him, some people hate him. I will say it seems like he's always making crazy statements, and it seems like they're almost always wrong. But here we go again. Bitcoin's popping up. Do you guys think Bitcoin will keep going? Also, let me know that in the comments, because I know a lot of people out there are pretty excited with this, Mike, and a lot of people are looking at Mara, Riot, and Coinbase. I will say Coinbase is my favorite, but it's hard not to look at Mara and Riot with some of those moves up they have. Like Mara ran up 12% today.
That's the thing. It's like with crypto moving the way it is, it's like we're starting to see some of these stocks that just boomed over the past couple of years start to pop back up again. And like in certain ways, stocks like Riot and Mara are so tempting. It's because when you have a 12 or a 17% day, it's like, how can you not be tempted to trade that? But at the same time, it's like, in some ways it's too good to be true, because it's like, just as easy as it can pop by 17% or 12%, it can dump by 20% or even more. So it's like they're tempting to play, but I definitely agree with you, and I definitely like Coinbase the most out of these three stocks. And I just feel like Coinbase is like the higher quality setup, where it's like more reliable is like a company, but also at the same time it offers like a lot of great liquidity and moves for short-term trading.
Yeah, and I feel like, if you're just trading it very, very quickly and, you're a scalper and, you've been doing this for a little while, Mara and Riot might not be bad for like a quick play to the upside, but, Coinbase can be great on some of those options and stuff like that too. So just keep your eyes on these. They've been booming a lot. And I will say Coinbase had a very awesome touch at the 70 support right around close. So really watch this one. I think that this is a very nice setup for tomorrow.
Sounds good. Well, with that being said, Tom, let's get right into those plays for tomorrow. One stock I'm watching pretty closely is NIO. This stock actually had a very good start to the day, and then it kind of just did nothing throughout the rest of the day. So it has a lot of good momentum. It's up around 5%. We have some resistance coming up right around this $10.60 level. It has some good momentum. I would not be surprised if we retested $10.60 sometime over the next couple days or even going into next week. But I think the biggest thing will be the sentiment in the overall market tomorrow. Obviously if CPI comes in terrible and everything's selling off, then it's like, all right, this play is probably not going to work. But at the same time, let's say the CPI or inflation data comes in great and everything's making new highs, and it's like, yeah, there's a ton of opportunity to ride this momentum to the upside.
Yeah, I actually like it a lot too. It's starting to bounce very, very nicely. And if we start to, break that high of day today around 980, I think that's an awesome resistance level. I'm sure a lot of sellers were coming in there, but I feel like tomorrow, like you said, if CPI goes well, and even if CPI doesn't go well, NEO has a weak correlation to SPY. So watch it closely. It's a China stock. And if those China stocks are booming, it could maybe have a mind of its own, hopefully. But looking at stocks for tomorrow, for me, I'm actually going to look at one to the upside and then one play, that kind of goes against the market. But with my first play, I'm going to look at Bank of America. They had a pretty good move today, up 2.76%. I did see some bad news today about the IMF with some banks, but banks actually blasted. Bank of America had a great day. JP Morgan had a great day as well. If Bank of America gets above short-term resistance around 29, I'm going to look for a nice push up to around maybe $30 or even higher. On that daily chart, Bank of America has actually been falling down quite a bit lately, and that's a pretty nasty drop to the downside. And I could see maybe a short-term move back up. But then again, the CPI makes a big difference tomorrow, just like Mike said.
All right, good stuff. Another stock I'm watching pretty closely is Microsoft, and this is to the downside. It has some support right around $281 and $280. Right now it's lingering right around 283. So if it breaks those support levels, I think it has a lot of room to fall lower. It had a pretty bad day today, which is a good thing if you're shorting it or buying puts on it. I would not be surprised if this one falls lower. Like I said, though, we want to make sure we have a good break below support, and ideally we want some panic from this inflation reading.
Yeah, if we do get that, I feel like this stock could potentially sell down quite a bit. There's so many levels coming up on Microsoft. I've been actually watching it so closely over the past few weeks because there's been a lot of huge supports that you mentioned there. So definitely watch that, and 280 should be pretty big over the next couple days, I think. Man, I will say, if the market ends up going down tomorrow, I'm going to really keep my eyes on GLD and gold. I feel like that this could end up being a huge play to the upside again if we see a lot of fear come back in. Now, if the market starts, blasting to the upside, then go ahead and maybe watch the banks again, like Bank of America, or maybe some of these tech stocks for a potential breakout. But I'm going to really keep my eyes on GLD. If we get a lot of panic, I think it could be a possible good play to the upside. I might even watch SQQQ if we also see, the market panic, because I really think that the NASDAQ is part of, obviously the main sector that's overextended right now is tech. And as we know, tech stocks make up the majority of the NASDAQ.
Yep. All right, good stuff. Well, Tom, it is now time for the momentum plays. With the first one, we have Apple to the downside.
AAPL, there's a huge support here right at $160. And I love the way Apple's starting to slide off here at some of these big resistances. So if we break under 160, I will watch for a push down with Apple. And there was actually a gap a couple weeks ago. So maybe we'll be able to fill that gap down to 157.50.
All right. With the next one, we have Meta also to the downside.
META. Now, this one is very overextended here. If we start to move down, I think there could be a pretty significant pullback on this one. Go ahead and watch for it to fall under 213, which is recent support.
All right. And with the last one, we have BABA, and we need both directions.
BABA. Yeah, the China stocks, I feel like could go any direction here. But if they fall under 99, go ahead and watch for a push down. They're actually holding well below $100 here end of day. So maybe they'll end up falling down tomorrow. But if they push back up above 100 and break up above 103, then watch for some calls.
All right, you guys heard Tom. We have that upside level on BABA for potential day trade to the upside tomorrow. And then we have that downside level as well. If it breaks below that, we are looking at it for a day trade down. And then don't forget about the setup with Meta and Apple, both of which are downside setups as well. So keep them close on watch. But it is now time for the big money trade of the day. We had $1,062,000 go into XLK. So more specifically, it is XLK put options. This is essentially a bet that XLK will go down. If XLK does go down, the hedge fund or trader in this situation has a lot of millions to make. But essentially, more specifically, this is a trade that XLK will go down, but it is a put debit spread where the fund bought the 145 strike puts and shorted the 135 strike puts, both of which expire on May 5th. So ideally, if XLK is at or below $135 on May 5th, the trader in this situation has a lot of millions to make. So XLK is basically an ETF with a bunch of tech stocks. And, as we've been talking about, these tech stocks are overextended. So I actually like this setup, and I would not be surprised if XLK fell. Obviously, we want to wait for some confirmation with this inflation reading, but I don't think this setup is bad at all. And if you don't want to trade a put debit spread, you can just get normal puts.
Yeah, I actually really like this play, Mike. This could be an awesome potential play to the downside here. If we keep getting rejection, this is a very nice area of resistance, right around like 152 on XLK, even like right around 150, you could say, I guess. But pretty much every time we've hit here in the past couple of years, we've fallen right back down. So I'm going to continue to watch this for another push back to the downside. If CPI comes in tomorrow and the SPY starts blasting back up, like I talked about, I feel like that there's a, pretty big deal with this trend line on the SPY. And if we start to confirm up, we might go on a nice bullish run on a lot of these stocks. But, I feel like if we reject off this resistance, this could be an amazing play down. So, I feel like just, waiting to see what happens tomorrow and then maybe following this with some puts or something could be a pretty good trade here. Now, Mike, they have the 135 and the 145 strikes. If somebody was getting individual puts, what would you recommend? I'd probably say maybe like the 145. And if you were going straight up puts, maybe even the 150s or 148s.
Yeah, exactly. I would at least want to get the 145s, but, like you said, maybe even the 150s. So, ultimately it depends on your risk tolerance, but the more deep in the money you get with the more time you get, the safer the trade will be.
Yeah, exactly. So just, keep this on the radar. There's some potential strikes there that we threw out if you guys want to follow the play, but, screenshot this if you want to, keep it in the background. I always keep these written on the charts too. So if you guys ever join the Discord or anything like that, just, join up and I'll post them back up for you.
Sounds good. All right, Tom. Well, I think we're set for a very exciting day tomorrow. It's going to be the most exciting day of the week. We have a lot of big news that's going on right now, a lot of big setups that are currently in play, a lot of tech stocks that are overextended. Do you have any last minute thoughts or anything else that's on your mind?
Yeah, I'm really hoping that the CPI can come in positive tomorrow, but if it doesn't, just be on the lookout for puts. We went over a lot of setups tonight. Go back and rewatch the video if you guys missed any. I think there's a lot of grade A opportunities. Like Mike, like right now, with all these big stocks at resistance, if CPI comes in negative, that's going to be like the filet mignon of trades right now, like with Meta and AMD and with Nvidia. And if those stocks start selling over, we'll probably see some pretty nasty sell-off. So just keep it on the radar, but obviously it all comes down to CPI.
You know it. All right, good stuff. And if you guys are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe. When you subscribe, you'll see our videos recommended to you more often. And last but not least, if you are not in the StockedUp Discord chat already, join up. It's that first link in the description in the comments down below. It's completely free. When you join, you can network with a bunch of other great people and traders. We have a couple bots in there with breaking news and earnings and day trades and a bunch of great stuff. So definitely make sure to join up. It's completely free. It's that first link in the description in the comments down below. And besides that, let's have an amazing week.